Okay, we're rolling.
It's time for the double stop with Brian Sword.
Welcome to the Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword. And I'm back after a pretty long break. Definitely the longest since I started the show. My wife had a baby, so we had our hands full. Things are starting to settle, so it's time to get going again. And I'm back in a big way with Billy Sheehan on the show. He's been on a few other podcasts recently, so I tried to cover different material than other shows. So we cover his early days, Talas, his solo records, his near reunion with the David Lee Roth Band, his recent fundraiser for Tony MacAlpine, and of course, the excellent new Winery Dogs CD. So let's jump right into it. Here is my conversation with Billy Sheehan.
My mother was a big fan of a lot of great music, so we always had excellent music on in the house. Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, stuff like that. And then I had an older brother and two sisters who weren't musical at all, except for my one sister, the younger of the two. She got a guitar to try to, she was a fan of a lot of folk music back in the 60s. She got a guitar, gave up on it, and I would sneak into her room and borrow her guitar. I still owe her $30 for that guitar. So I always tell her, you'll never be broke. No, but seriously, no real music. But my father was a recitationist, which is a person who recites stories and poems. It's kind of an Irish tradition, and he would be somewhat of an entertainer as a young man doing that. So I got some of the idea of storytelling, which to me does have a parallel to music and playing. I got that from my dad.
And how old do you think you were when you started sneaking in playing that guitar?
Oh, this is around maybe 12.
Okay. And was that did you start playing guitar or did you quickly turn to bass?
Well, I wanted a bass because the guy around the corner played bass, but I didn't have the money for a bass. So I, learned how to play bass parts on a guitar and learned how to play basic chords, sing along, mostly cowboy chords, open C, open G, and I learned how to play the chords to a lot of songs before I finally got my bass. So I would get a friend of mine would show me how to do, show me the chords to what the songs were, and I could play along, play those songs on my guitar, like Gloria, Substitute by the Kinks, a bunch of Beatles songs, a bunch of Rolling Stones songs, all things like that were popular on the radio at the time. So it was fascinating to me that I could actually make the guitar do those songs. Then eventually I got came in the money to get a bass, and always kept my fundamental guitar playing strumming in, because I write a lot on guitar. It's a lot easier to write on guitar, but bass became was originally my goal, and then finally when I got one, I was able to realize that.
And what was it about bass? Was it the fact that there was somebody down the street that was cool that had one, or what made you hone in on that?
Yeah, he was the coolest guy in our street. He was just over here the other night for dinner, and that's why he's still good friends of mine. And he was older, so he hung out with my older brother and sisters. So I think he was the guy that helped my sister get her guitar. But he was just a cool guy. He drove a Triumph motorcycle and had a good-looking girlfriend. Even walked cool. You could tell when he was coming from blocks away. He was just a cool guy, and he still is. He was a really wonderful, generous, gifted player too. Really great, excellent bass player. One of the best around in Buffalo has ever had, really. And he was a big influence on me early on.
And did he give you lessons when you started playing bass?
Not really lessons, but he would, show me. The first bass I picked up was his bass, and I plucked on it a little bit, and I instantly got a blister on my finger. So I knew we were headed for a long-term relationship. It bit back right away. So I think it's Gibson SG bass, I think, or EB, whatever the EB signature. It was a solid body version. He also had a hollow body version later on, and then eventually a P bass. But I got the P bass was my first real bass. Prior to that, I had a little Hagstrom bass that I got from a little music store just in the interim until I got my real bass.
And in terms of the scene in Buffalo for kids starting to play, how was it for finding bands and whatnot?
It was booming.
Yeah.
It was booming like crazy. There were bands everywhere. Right when I started playing, everybody was about being in a band. And there was, every block had at least a band on it in somebody's basement. And as you walk down the street on a summer night, you'd hear one band would fade away. Behind you was another one you could hear coming up ahead of you. And I remember driving down the street and seeing drums set up in people's windows. You know,
Awesome.
honestly, it was just it was an explosion of
Yeah.
people, musicians playing bands. And it was an incredible thing. And then the scene for performing, all the way up to when I left in the summer of '85 in Buffalo, there was always a great music scene. Not only there, but within a couple hundred miles, there were just dozens and dozens and dozens of places to play. So we made a living playing in a bar band. You know, that was before any record deals or anything. We had
Wow.
trucks, sound, lights, crew, office, secretary, agent, manager. All of us were in our own apartments. You know, so that was the kind of money we were generating just from being a bar band. And we played everywhere from southern Canada down to into Boston and Baltimore, west to Indiana and Milwaukee, New York City, and all points in between. So we had quite a range. It was a quite successful situation there. It's since dried up quite a bit, but there's still a lot of great players in that area.
You know, it's funny because, like, I'm in Canada. I'm in Vancouver right now, but I grew up in northern Ontario, way up, like basically 9 hours north of Toronto. And it's a funny thing because the way that the TV cable system works is we always get the three big American channels. And
Yeah.
because I was a straight shot, even though I was, you know, basically 10 hours north of Buffalo, Buffalo were the channels that we got because I think it was because
Yeah.
we were straight up from it. So
Yeah.
we're in these little 2,000 person town in northern Ontario, and we all had this kinship with Buffalo because we knew we would watch the 6 o'clock news, so we knew there was a traffic jam. Or whatever was happening in Buffalo, we knew, but we were 10 hours north. This is like 1980 kind of thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Bizarre
it's kind
thing.
of a similar thing with us and Canada in general, and certainly Toronto and the big cities that were near Buffalo, Toronto, Hamilton, stuff like that.
Sure.
Because we got all their channels also over the air, and so and plus we get some of the radio stations, which are great, Chum FM, and so we were hip to the Canadian bands more so than the rest of the states, and a lot of Canadian bands would come to Buffalo to play quite a bit.
Yeah, I think Buffalo and Detroit were two kind of big markets for most Canadian bands.
Exactly. It was Windsor, which was across from Detroit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I actually briefly played in Max Webster.
I know. I want to ask you about that because that's amazing.
Funny.
Have you ever been interviewed by Kim Mitchell? Because he also does radio DJing now in Toronto.
Yeah, I talk to him once in a while. We haven't done anything, but I should drop him a line and have him do play some Winery Dogs.
Exactly. And actually, he's active again. He's been playing some gigs lately. So, and he's an amazing guitar player. How did you join up with them?
Well, we played in Toronto in my band Talas. And the first place we played was Larry's Hideaway. We were brand new to Toronto. We were playing this little club. And it was like you played the whole week, so it was like it must have been on a Monday or a Tuesday. And there was almost nobody there, but one guy was there, and we started playing. He watched a little while, and he ran out. And he came back in, and there was more people at the table, more people at the table, more people showed up, more people. So pretty soon I found out that was Kim. And he went out and made a phone call to his friend and said, "You got to get down here and check this out." And so he became kind of a fan and a friend, I guess. You know, so I stayed in touch with him. And then I called him one day and told him, "Yeah, I'm not in Talas anymore. Hey, you got to play with us." So I said, "Well, okay." And I went up to Toronto and we played some Mike Tilka. Worked with him for a while, but they had a guy named Pi Dubois was their lyricist.
Yeah.
For some reason, Pi had a little thing about me. I don't know what it was. And so I think eventually he convinced Kim that it wasn't a good idea to have me in the band. And so I said, "Oh, fair enough. I got a lot of friends back in Buffalo, and I'll just go back there." And then after that, about 3 or 4 more times, we almost played together at various things. And we'd still love to do a couple songs with him or record with him or perform with him too. And actually, I almost got one of his songs on the Eat and Smile record, which would have been a great thing for him. A song called Kids in Action. I think we almost started. We may have even demoed it, but I don't recall. But Dave liked the song, and we were looking for material. We were doing that record other than the stuff we wrote, and that was in the running for a little while.
Yeah, that's a paycheck and a half for him. Now, for Talas, I'm really interested in the bass solos on the Talas records. I'm wondering, it's such a silly question, but how long did it take for people to crack the code of the upside down letters for your bass solos, and where did that even come from?
There was a guy, it might have been Martin Gardner. He was a just kind of science fiction writer or a pundit of literature or whatever, and I'm not sure if he did it, but or someone around him did it, or he wrote about it. But I just remember seeing that, using letters upside down and numbers to substitute to say the same thing, either way.
Uh-huh.
And so I just noticed that if a 5 is an S, then my last name starts with an S. Maybe this might work. So I made a 54334. There's SHEEH, and then a V, the upside down A, and an N. It's self-explanatory, and it just kind of popped out. I didn't have a name for the solo, so I think I had that written on a couple of my like little notebooks and stuff. And I think somebody would potentially, what's that? And I go, it's my name. I said, you call your solo that. I go, okay, I think I will. And so that's what happened. And initially the solo was going to be a distortion feedback, big giant, massive high-speed thing. But my amp failed me, and I had to switch to just the clean tone. So I did a more strummy, more sedate solo as a result. Was going to do more of like an eruption kind of a solo initially, but the amp failed that day. We were in a tight schedule, so I just did the clean tone. It's funny because I went to see Van Halen in Toronto years ago, and I'm in the dressing room now, sitting around. Alex is on the couch, Dave and Eddie there were talking, and they had shown that sound on the radio. And out of nowhere, they played my solo on the radio while I'm in the dressing room with Van Halen. Hey, that's my solo on there. Really? And they were listening to it. It was really funny. It was a coincidence of a chance of 1 in a quadrillion ever happening.
You've got to be the only person that record of actually having an unaccompanied bass solo played on the radio.
What a world.
Okay, so the legendary bass, and I've been following for a long time. So the P bass, the scallop frets, all of that. I believe it's retired now, but the mutations you've done on that instrument, it actually kind of reminds me of something like Eddie Van Halen would do with kind of really heavily modifying. But when did you start modifying that bass, and what were you trying to get out of it that you weren't getting from its original state?
Well, the P bass alone is about all you ever need. And it's just great, and it's on more records than any other bass ever, by such a wide margin that it's not even worth it to even add up the other ones. But there was another pretty iconic tone, which that neck position pickup tone of the Gibson basses. And it's a super deep, ultra low end. And before my P bass got delivered to the music store, the guy gave me a Gibson EBO. It's a hollow body with the one single neck position pickup, an EBO bass to use. And I jumped some super deep, low bass it was. And I always remembered that. And then I noticed when I got the P bass, if there was space, I could put that other pickup on there. So I forgot how I acquired the pickup. I think I wrote to Gibson and they sent it to me. They sent it to me, it was already wired. So you just pop it right in. And I think they were thinking it was a replacement for a pickup on one of their instruments. So I didn't know how to wire a switch between the two, so I just wired the whole thing with its wiring harness, which ended at the quarter-inch jack, the quarter-inch input jack, and just drilled the holes in my. I'm a little home handyman, so I drilled the holes and chiseled out the spot with hand chisels to get the pickup in there, bolted it in, and that was it. And then I would run it into 2 channels of my amp. And then eventually when I had enough money to get a second amp, I would run one into one and one into the other. And it just turned into a really great way of getting two basses in one. the super deep, ultra low end of the Gibson, and then just the clarity and cleanliness of that P bass. Because I was playing the 3-piece band, that broader range of the instrument really helped fill in the holes. And then eventually, when the P bass pickup got more distorted, the EBO pickup stayed clean and low, so it was never a loss of bass, even though I would do some shenanigans with the distortion ones, where there was always a super deep, clean low for the bass. We actually got accused a couple times of having a keyboard guy like behind the gear or something, which I took it as a compliment when they did that, because there's a lot of sound coming out of that amp. It actually turned into 3 amps, actually 4, a stereo distortion, completely clean, both off the Fender pickup, and then a separate amp that was just low frequencies from the EBO pickup. And it was a big massive old sound, but it wasn't, I found out later also, it wasn't a unique thing. Rickenbacker had the Ricco sound, stereo jack you can plug in, and it terminates to 2 outputs, one from each pickup. And also all of the early alembic basses were all wired with dual output. It was a standard thing for them in the early days. And other guys had done it too. And I only found this out in more recent years. I didn't know it at the time. John Paul Jones split the pickups in his jazz bass to 2 outs, and then he would run it into 2 different things, from what I know. And a couple other players have done similar things. And I'm always surprised to see, like I saw Mel Shacker's, a bass of Mel Shacker from Grand Funk Railroad, and he had a big EBO pickup on there, same as mine, only on a jazz bass, not a P bass. So, and the Stampeders, they were a Canadian band, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
We opened up for them at the Hard Rock Quarry in the 70s, and they watched us play. I didn't think of it. And the next time I saw them, I was at Don Kirshner's rock concert, and the bass player had that pickup on his bass. It's funny. So he must have liked the sound. So it worked really well. The bass is still here. It's in my closet right now, and I haven't taken it out for a while. But if there's ever an Eat 'em and Smile reunion, I'm going to bring that bass out to play it for the show.
Oh, brilliant. Out of retirement. Love it. Okay, so I'll jump up to the Eat 'em and Smile time, and I really have one specific question, because I think it's been covered really well recently. But I interviewed Steve Stevens last year at some point, and he discussed that he was up for the gig. And it was a funny thing because he kind of, we talked about it, and all the rock news sites really latched onto it because either he'd never said it before or nobody had noticed really when he said it. And it became kind of a big thing. But from your perspective, were you already in the band when he was a possibility, and how far did that go?
Yeah, I was. I remember being on the road and talking with Dave on the phone. He's talking about getting Steve. And I told him, yeah, Steve is awesome. He's a great player, and I love his playing. That's cool. And then when I got back, I finished the Talas tour that I was on, the Ingve Talas tour. At the beginning of the tour, the day before that tour, I had the meeting with Dave, and he decided to start a band. I said, okay, cool. And so I said, we'll get a guitar player, we'll find a drummer, and we'll have a band, and there we go. And I said, I'm in. Cool. Good. We shook hands, and that was that. So I went on. I had to complete that tour. It was my obligation. And as soon as I got done with that tour, they flew me out to L.A. right away. And he had fooled around with a couple guitar players, but no one really of note. And then he was still thinking of Steve Stevens. And then I went to see him again, and he said, I don't think the Steve thing's going to work. He's not totally more. He wants to stick with Billy. I said, yeah, I can see his point. It's a great gig, and it's part his. So I told Dave, I got another Steve. I know another Steve, because before I had heard from Dave, my record label for Talas was Relativity, and they had also signed a deal with Steve. And I remember we were already in touch a little bit about maybe playing together. And then when Dave and I ran into Steve when I went out to L.A., and I remember talking to him and thinking, yeah, we should do something together, you know. And then when the Steve Stevens thing fell through, I told Dave, I know another Steve, and sure enough, we had Steve down. And it turned out, in my humble opinion, that was Steve Stevens would have been great. It's awesome. It would have been a different band. I don't know how it would have been, but it would have been different. But with Steve, he was kind of the perfect thing for how Eat 'em and Smile finally came about. Sense of humor, you know, the Zappa part of Steve was a perfect element to have to bring into the Eat 'em and Smile thing, for the musicality of it and also the comedy and humor and entertainment of it, which I think were both super important aspects of the whole Eat 'em and Smile experience. So I think Steve was just the perfect guy. And when he got in there, then Steve and I went and found Greg Bissonette. And I found Brett Tuggle through Yamaha, called Yamaha, looking for a great keyboard player. And they recommended Brett, and I brought him down. And that was the band.
And I was going to wait till the end to ask, but I can't help it. The near miss reunion, which was all over the news, and it was like not only the 11th hour, but the 11th hour and the 59th minute of when it got shut down.
I had my bass on. I was ready to go on.
Oh! So how did that come together, and when is there plans to try again?
There's no actual plan, but there's a willingness with everyone to do
okay.
it. So, Dave would like to play, and I would sure love to play with him, and so would Steve and Greg and Brett. So, that's all I know. Hopefully it will happen. But there's no specific thing going on. But it's just great to hang with him. All of us together. It's the first time we hung together as a band. Even though we didn't play that night, we were standing around backstage. And what a riot! How great! It was just so. A couple times I almost had tears in my head. Man, it's 30 years gone by, and here we are. We're all here, healthy. Great plays with Ringo. Steve's got a huge solo career. I got the Winery Dogs and Mr. Big. Brett is with Fleetwood Mac. So everybody's done really great. And Dave, of course, was right on top of his game. It's just great. But we initially Greg and I got up and did a thing at the Jam, and that was really cool. We had somebody else, I forget who sang. Might have done some Even a Smile, might have done some Van Halen. I forgot what we did. But then Steve was out of town, and so when Steve got back in town, said, "Steve, you should come join us. It'd be great. We'll do a little, go and do. It's been 30 years, Even a Smile." Because Greg and I and Brett and Steve, we often have a dinner together on holidays usually, just to get together and tell stories, and it's always a riot. And so we said, so Steve, come on down. So somebody said, well, boy, we should reach out to Dave and see if he would join us. Man, impossible, but let's give it a try. So I sent a couple messages, and Steve sent a couple messages, and we didn't know if he'd respond or not. So in the meantime, we hold on a second. In the meantime, sorry, I got distracted here. So we just thought, well, if somebody is going to sing it, we could maybe get Ralph from Steel Panther, who does a great day. So that'd be cool. Yeah, good idea. So we contacted Ralph and the Lucky Strike folks, and we nobody told them that we were in touch with Dave, and he might show, because we didn't know. And sure enough, a couple of days, maybe 5 days before, or a week, he got in touch and said, "Hey man, I'd love to do it." And so I thought, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable." So sure enough, no, we can't tell anybody, because as soon as the word gets out, it's going to be completely out of control. So we still didn't tell anybody. And it was about the night before, and I thought, we got to arrange for security and stuff. Like, you can't just walk in there. It's going to be crazy. So I had to talk with Chuck Wright, who runs the Jam, and Matt Starr, played down some Mr. Big also. He runs a big thing to do with it. And I know I could trust those guys. I said, "Look, Dave is going to join us." I said, "You're kidding, unbelievable." So I don't know what happened, and they didn't leak any information, but people just started speculating and thinking, what if? And a friend of mine came to L.A. to see it, and I told him, "You better get on there really early." We were out there at 5:30, and it was a line already. And by the time we got there, it was way overcrowded, and the line went, even though the place was completely over full, it only holds about 570 people legally. They let them put 6 or 7 in there once in a while without getting into a civil. It was already way over 12. The final number I heard was 2,000, and quite frankly, it's dangerous. It was just, the room doesn't hold that many people. The fire department was within their rights to shut it down, but and not only were that many people inside, the line went down Highland and snakes down Hollywood Boulevard also. So it was just, the line was huge. So it was another probably easily 1,000 people standing in line that couldn't get in. And so we thought, oh man, this is going to be completely out of control. So we went to the dressing room, and that was right behind the stage, and we got ready. And Steve's guitar was there, and we're all ready to go. And we had planned out the curtain will be down. Steve would start playing the beginning talking part of Yankee Rose, and Dave would answer on the microphone. People would hear it, probably not think it's him right away, and then the curtain opened, and out comes Dave, and the place goes berserk. So we were ready to go. I mean, we were just less than a minute away. And then we heard something going on outside, something in the fire department. We said, okay, well, we offered to pay the fine. We offered to do whatever else. It just would have nothing to do with it. They said, this is just too much. It's too full. And they had guys in the place with full-on fire gear, helmets and coats.
Wow.
And everything, and yelling at people to leave. You got to go. And so we said, oh, Jesus. So we were pretty pissed about it. It wasn't really anybody's fault. You know, it was no one to blame. And poor Chuck Wright broke his heart because, the capper to quite an amazing thing. So, unfortunately, it didn't happen. But like I said, there was a chance to hang with Dave, with me, Steve, Greg, and Brad, and just be in the back. And we stayed there till about 2 a.m, just hanging out, talking. And then we went our separate ways and agreed at some point to see if it's possible to do this again. We certainly will.
Okay, I want to move on to Mr. Big, and I'm going to focus on one question because when I talked to Eric Martin, we talked for 2 hours, so I can't go there. But the song had enough. When I talked to Eric Martin, Mr. Big, we talked for 2 hours, so I'm going to focus on one question and move on.
Okay.
The song had enough on the first record, which is a sole writing credit to you with the amazing bass solo up front. Can you tell me how that song came together and how hard was it to convince the guys to put a bass solo on the first record?
Well, I wrote that in Talas, actually. And I had a lot of faith in the song, and I liked the song. And Eric singing it moved it into a whole other level of quality, in my humble opinion, because you really just got to he can turn a B- song into an A+. He's just got that kind of a voice, you know. And I think just to put a little tag in front of it there was I don't know whose idea it was. It probably wasn't mine, because it's not usually I usually let someone else suggest for me to do things rather than assert myself on it. So but I just had a little piece that I'd kind of worked out, a little raking thing, and just put it in front there as a little intro to the song, and in the same key. And because I had just come out of the David Lee Roth Band, and had won a bunch of polls, and and did 2 platinum records and all that. Well, the other guys there were just kind of, Eric was kind of, he had some record deals, but they just never worked out for him. They just never panned out. I don't know why, but it just never happened. Paul's band, Racer X, had just broken up. They couldn't get signed. They kept doing everything to try and get signed. They couldn't get signed. Pat was, I think he was working with Belinda Carlisle as the drummer, and so he wasn't really in the best place he could be. So when I came in, I kind of had a little bit of inadvertent authority as a guy who was in the levels of success, was doing pretty well. So, but I never asserted it. I never, well, I got to do a bass solo. That's not my DNA at all. But they were, I think they thought, put a little thingy on there. Maybe it'll be somewhat of an attraction on the record, because, people seem to be being kind to me regarding my bass playing. So that was all there was to it, really.
And I remember when that record, before it came out, like about 3-4 months before the first record came out, there was like kind of an announcement in Metal Edge, and it had like a full page photo and a big article. So there was still some pretty good juice heading in before that record came out. You were getting some pretty good coverage.
Yeah.
Was that because you had a strong manager, or how did that happen?
No, we just, I was pretty tied in with a lot of journalists and press people. And so when they found out about it, they wanted to get the story, and that was just about it. Now because I just came out of David Lee Roth, it was something of note to them, I guess. So they responded that way. So it was good. So I used the juice I got from the David Lee Roth thing to launch the band, and that really helped a lot. So everywhere we went, it was this guy from that band that had the platinum record and his buddies, and they got a new band, so we would get a little more attention than we might have received had I just come straight from Buffalo. You know, it would have been a little,
totally.
would have been a much more difficult way to get to where we wanted to go. Also getting signed, too. We got signed by Atlantic, and they had almost signed Talas a bunch of times, and I knew the label really well, and they knew me. And that was kind of an automatic when we finally went there. So that helped out a lot, too. So, you know, I was glad, because in my mind, when I put the band together, I don't know if those guys ever believed it, or if they believe it even now, but I was really hoping to expose those guys to the world. I mean, I really wanted to help them and make them famous and make them successful. You know, I thought Eric had just a world-class voice that nobody knew about. Paul was the greatest guitar player in L.A. at the time, but still didn't venture much outside of L.A. clubs. Pat, just great drummer, but wasn't really. He'd done a couple things in but nobody knew who he was. Rich, so I thought this is a great chance for these guys. I would like to see it come to be that they get what I felt they deserved. You know.
Okay, I'm going to jump forward to Compression, which is an album that I absolutely love, and I was so pleasantly surprised when I got it because I was expecting one thing and I got another. You know, I pick it up sight unheard and expecting a bass showcase, and I get a collection of songs.
Cool.
Great songs. So, and I don't think there's really a bass solo in it. So how did that come together, and why did you decide to go down that path, which is probably a big left turn from what the fans expected?
Yeah, well, I got I'm glad you like it. Thanks very much. I got a baritone guitar from Yamaha. One of the guys there made one for himself. I said, man, this is fantastic. 12-string baritone. Beautiful. Can I get one? He goes, okay, I'll make you one. So he made one, and I got it home, and it was just great. And I have a lower voice, so it was way more in my register as a singer. So I thought, so I started playing. I thought, man, it'd be great. I could do a record with this, write some songs and maybe croak out some vocals and see if I can, And then at the time, we were, Mr. Big was, and still is, doing well in Japan. So a Japanese label agreed to finance a record. So they sent me a giant check. I used the money for production. And saved a lot of the rest, which was a lot, and I'm very thankful for it. And got a friend of mine who helped me put together a lot of the stuff technically as far as recording and punch in and punch out and all that. Wrote about 60 pieces of music, pared that down to 30, ended up recording about 20, and then what made it to the record was what's on there. And I never really thought about I should do a bass solo because I really just felt more strongly about doing a record of songs because I don't know if I would really be interested in hearing it because a lot of bass players give me their solo records and they got they're playing fabulous bass and it's fantastic, but it doesn't really appeal to me. It's not something I would put on like on a Saturday night. If I've had people over my house who want to play some music, it's not not something I would gravitate towards. So I prefer to do stuff like that. With this, a song and some lyrics and some story behind it and some melodies and, I would just I just prefer that. So it worked out that way that I didn't make a solo record. And then the next one, I think Cosmic Troubadour, I did a few pieces that were instrumental. And then the Holy Cow, similar thing.
And on the next two, you had Ray Luzier.
Yeah.
How did you hook up with him? I've actually interviewed him as well, and he's an awesome dude. How did you hook up with him?
Well, I went out to, it was a NAMM show after party years ago for the Viper Room. And they had what was eventually to become Steel Panther. They were also a Van Halen tribute, Atomic Punks. There's a couple bands that had some interchangeable members, but it was the it was one of the ones that Ray played, and he was up on stage, and it was meant to be comedy. They were doing songs by famous '80s bands and making a goof of it, and then eventually would turn into Steel Panther. And they all, were wearing wigs and, having a laugh at it. It was funny and hilarious. Everybody loved it. And I'm watching, I'm going, wait a minute, is it me or is this drummer kick complete ass? This guy's killing. That's unbelievable. I think, geez. So I got in touch with him and hey, you're Ray. I met him. And so I had him right on the radar right away. And then apparently Dave must have heard something also, and Dave picked him up and used him for a while. But for his solo thing, for David Lee Roth. And then when I finally got him to play on my record, he came and did a spectacular job too. Really fast and all great. We actually got together and played the stuff bass and drums, which is really helpful in making the record cohesive. So we didn't just go in there and I played whatever he did on drums. We worked through the stuff and figured out our parts, and it was really helped make for in my mind, the quality of the outcome was much higher because of that. So when we had finished the record and we were going to play at a NAMM show, and he had a friend of his who played guitar, who had a baritone guitar, could come in and do that, and we'd do a couple of the pieces. So we were playing, I think, a Sabian party, and the DeLeo brothers from Stone Temple Pilots, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
They were also on the bill. And so we played, and they saw Ray, and they wanted a drummer like him, so he ended up getting that gig. And I think that's the same management as Korn. And sure enough, when Korn needed the guy, but it was rightfully so. Just a supreme talent, a wonderful guy, too. I'm so glad for him.
And that record he did with George Lynch, the KXM record, kills as well. That's amazing.
Yeah, he's just a great guy, too. Easy to work with, fast, on time, just fantastic.
Now, I quickly want to touch upon your relationship with Richie Kotzen as we head into the Winery Dogs. For his What Is record, you and Pat played on the song Locked Out, and Richie recently kind of mentioned that actually the original concept of that was for a 3-piece band that didn't work out. How did that come together? Yeah,
Richie played... he was friends of mine for a long, long time, and then I forgot how it actually came about. We thought about, let's just get together and knock out a couple songs. Stuff. We had a whole bunch of things where we were playing together and doing stuff, and me, Pat, and Richie in a little rehearsal hall, just for fun. We'll see what comes of it. And we were all kind of too busy at the time. And then when Paul quit Mr. Big, we thought, well, Richie's kind of automatic. He sings great, and he plays great, and he can probably do everything we need, so we got in touch with him right away. But I played with Richie a bunch. I also played with him on one of the solo tours. We did 5 shows in Japan, opening for the Rolling Stones a few years back.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. They were pretty awesome production. It was just a monstrous, huge production with. Like hundreds of people working on the show at any given moment.
And that was a good representation of Richie's popularity in Japan, when at that point here nobody had heard of him, because when the Rolling Stones tour North America, they have a band like, say, Pearl Jam open, like a huge band will, Motley Crue. It's a big honor to open for Rolling Stones. And then in Japan, he gets Richie Kotzen.
Yeah, it was the promoter that brought in the Stones also owned the label that Richie had just done the record on. And it's a funny thing because Richie was on the phone with them, and they said they're bringing in the Rolling Stones, and Richie goes, you should have me open up for the Stones. It'd be great. And they hadn't thought of it. And they go, well, it's a great idea. You didn't think of that? I mean, geez. So sure enough, they managed to get him on the bill there, and. It was really great. We had a wonderful time, and they were very kind to us.
Now, for the Winery Dogs, the story of the formation, yes, it comes out of what was an attempted John Sykes band, and then Eddie Trunk's involvement and his suggestion of Richie. Now, for you, was that a case of kind of like a forehead slapping, oh my God, why didn't I think of that, when
exactly.
You've had him, when you've worked with him so extensively?
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny because when the guy who was trying to kind of manage the thing initially, I got his name, but he contacted me. I was on tour with Mr. Big, and he contacted me and told me that Mike wanted him to call me, and that and Mike and John Sykes were doing a thing. The instant I heard what it was, I knew it wasn't going to work. I played along, but I said, this is not going to work. I had the feeling, call it intuition, whatever else, but I just thought, this doesn't add up to me. John's amazing, great player, blah, blah, blah. It's all fantastic. But it just, for some reason, it just didn't. So I just kept my mouth shut. Let nature take its course. Sure enough, a conference call came about where things were taking way too long, and Mike wants things to happen now, as I do usually too. And so Mike got a little bit frustrated and just said, well, let's sit down. And then Mike called me back and said, who do you know? And I'm thinking, geez, let me think about it. And then Mike talked with Eddie Trunk and Richie Kotzen. Oh, geez, of course. And Richie was a perfect guy. So we lucked out. Three people that work together sonically, personally, and business-wise. It works out really well. So we're all very pleased about it.
And now you've got 2 records out, and John still only put a few samples. So you made the right call, I think.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong here. It's just that's how some people work, and that's great. But just for me, I want to move things along quick, and I in the studio we can go. I don't mind going real fast in the studio. I remember talking with Robert Fripp one time about. I became buddies with him over the years, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's told me the story of recording 21st century in the Court of Crimson King, the first record. He said because it took us 7 days and it was recorded in somebody's living room. And it's perfect. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's just a great record. The Beatles records took, the early records were quick. The first Talas record was, 5 days maybe. It's all quick. And I think that's a good sign when things move fast. It just seemed to, but it just has to be my style of doing it. It just, like I said, there's no right or wrong here, but that's just the way, and that's Mike's style also, and very similar to Richie too.
Now the new record, very strong, again, very well received. In terms of the writing process, it seems like this was the first opportunity for you guys to write together in a room, having the experience of touring. So it's a fully formed band, which is more traditional, like, say, Talas, where you would have played together for a couple of years and then done a record. How was that experience to write and produce this record?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Having toured already and gone through the entire process once, the new record now just has an instant, more stable foundation right away. So we knew each other musically. When we first started on the first record, we knew pretty much each other. Mike and Richie didn't know each other as well as I knew Mike and I knew Richie, and they knew me because I had worked with both of them separately before a lot of things. So that was no problem for me. I'm glad too, because as a bass player, you're the guy that's got to hold things together between time and pitch, rhythm and melody. So that worked out really well. But this time we knew each other a lot more personally, and Mike and Richie became really good friends on the road, and everybody had a great time touring. There was never any real drama or freakouts or problems. It was really smooth. So now working on the new record was comfortable, easy pace. Go in, knock a few things out, take a break, go back in, knock a few more out, and it just went fast and easy. And like I said a little earlier, when things move fast and smoothly like that, to me, it's a good indication that what we have is something that's working. And again, that's just our style. Maybe we'll do a record where we go really slow one time too. Who knows? But there's never any methodology that I'm chained to by any means. It can always be whatever. It doesn't. As long as we get what we want in the end, I don't care how we get there.
Now, there's a lot of supergroups right now. Frontier is focusing on that. I think, 10 years ago, it was all about the tribute records, and now it's all about the supergroups. But this is such a different thing where it's you're touring extensively. You're doing multiple records. It feels like a real band. It feels like everybody's priority. Do you think that's why it's so much more successful than most of these other supergroups?
I believe it is, because I think you, as a fan, when I buy a record or get into a band, it's like I'm investing, doing an emotional investment. And when they split up or change members or whatever else, and that is not in tune with them continuing on with what I loved in the first place, I feel kind of betrayed. And I think a lot of times people are a little bit worried about investing in their time, effort, energy, and attention on something that may just be gone in a couple of weeks, So we right from the get-go said, let's not make it a project. Well, let's do a band, like a real band, where we tour and we share stuff and we write things together and record it, and and that was the idea from the beginning. And though a lot of people didn't believe it, though. A lot of people thought, it's just a one-off, and if the record doesn't do well, they'll be gone. And so we had to prove it, and especially with a lot of promoters, they wouldn't really put us in decent gigs at all. They'd put us in a horrible little, cruddy little, terrible basement club somewhere, some god-awful place with no dressing room, no nothing, and expect us to implode because it's really tough to do a gig like that, especially when all three of us are used to a little bit better surroundings. But we did it anyway. We said, you know what? We'll play in the horrible, terrible of the clubs. And sure enough, they were packed with wonderful people that were there to support us anyway. So we said, hey, this is fine. The promoters can do everything they want. They're not gonna get to us. So we just kept hitting it, and every time we had huge numbers coming out of every little place we played, and everybody was happy, and the reviews were great, and so we built on that. And but it is really true, I think, that if you just keep reconfiguring yourself with other people until you get the right combination, I don't know if that's really the way you do a band. Maybe in the initial stages you do before anyone knows about it, but I think once you're established, you should once you make a decision, I like to see people stick with it. As a fan, that's how I feel about it. So I think from what I know, and I'm really closely in touch with a lot of people that come see us play, that is a big factor to them. That we're really there.
I saw you guys in the first tour in Seattle, and I think that was probably a similar club you're talking about. Like, it was a pretty small place.
Yeah.
But it was packed, and the people loved the opportunity to see you guys in a small venue. And I look over, and there's Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, snapping photos on his cell phone. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people there that were really into it.
How cool! Yeah, I love playing small places. It is way more intimate. Musicians that only have the opportunity to play small places, when they may be covering their backs by saying that. But I prefer the small places. But I've done both. I'm very, very lucky to have had the opportunity to do both. And as a matter of fact, we were talking about the Stones tour we did in Japan. The closest person to the stage was so far away I could barely recognize anyone's face. I mean, it was just there's this huge gap for TV cameras and everything in the front of the stage. And the stage is so high, so huge. And we're in the Tokyo Dome. It's just the biggest venue in Tokyo. And but it was like we were playing all by ourselves up there on a deck, because it was just so far from everybody. Then when I play the baked potato, I keep my drink on a table of the people sitting in front, because there's no place else. And mind if I put my drink? Oh, sure, go ahead. But I'm telling you, the pressure of playing a little place where people are sitting arm's length away is way more than if they're 50 yards back. It's really more intimate. They see everything that happens. They hear everything that happens. And you see and hear everything that happens with the audience. It really is a great experience. I do enjoy playing up close and personal all the time.
You mentioned when you formed Mr. Big how happy you were to take these players and kind of give them a venue to be seen and heard. Now that Richie Kotzen finally has some recognition after 25 years, how does it feel to have him, people respond so well to him the same way?
Incredible. I have said from the beginning in this group, I've had a bunch of great shots, and I'm very, very thankful for it. But one of my real reasons in this band is I would like the world to know the superstar, Richie Kotzen. That's really how I look at him. Really, the guy's just an incredible writer, incredible singer, songwriter, piano mind-blowing guitar, a whole new way now, playing with his fingers, and it's just a really. And plus, he's been a dear friend for a long, long time. We hang out on nights off, and I go over there, and he comes over here, and we enjoy hanging with each other. So I'm really glad to see more people are discovering. And I scroll down the comments of any given thing, and everybody's always so surprised about his voice. And the first time I heard him, he came over to my house. I had a piano in my house. He sat down, just sang and played something. I thought, oh man, this guy's this is pretty good.
You've been really generous with your time, and I just want to ask you one more thing is about the Tony MacAlpine show you just did. I'd interviewed him maybe 6-8 weeks before his diagnosis, which is really shitty. How did that come together? Because it was such a massive, massive success and such a great cause.
Well, two key people, Mike Mesker, was acting as Tony's manager. He also works with Steve Vai. That's where we first met Tony. Did a bang-up job of getting everything together, and then he designated Mike Portnoy as the musical director, which was a great idea because Mike will get the job done no matter what. And Mike tirelessly and at great personal expense slammed away and got everything together in a short amount of time. And it was those two guys particularly, and then about maybe another 20 others that really made the thing happen, aside from the musicians. And then everybody, of course, that was on the stage has either worked with Tony or was close to Tony or was a huge fan of Tony in some way. So it was a really beautiful, magical night, and the vibe in the place was, it wasn't solemn, but it was. We had an underlying level of seriousness to it because we were really trying to help him out. And I don't know what the final total is. I may know in about a week or so. But I know I got a bass to auction. And the bass normally sells for I think about $1,800, and it's already up over $5,000. So we're making some good money. We could get upwards 50, maybe 75. If we had $100,000 for him, that's going to be just awesome. We all love that guy, and he's one of the greatest musicians I know. I mean, the top, probably the most well-versed person I know about classical music, which I'm a huge fan of as well. Just brilliant. We spent a lot of time together. I played on his first record, and we had some great moments together.
Well, that's a great thing you guys did for him, and hopefully he makes a full recovery.
Yeah. I don't know where it's at. I've got an email from him thanking me for the thing. So he's, and Mike Mesker is very close with him, and he gives me a report. And unfortunately, Tony's wife contracted breast cancer at about the same time. And she had just been dealing with her dad, who just contracted some form of cancer as well. So bang, 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 they got hit, really hard. So I think this is going to be a big help for him, and we're making sure that he gets every penny that comes in too. I'm not sure if they donated the venue that night, if Live Nation did or not, or if somebody did. Because normally it's about $25,000 or $30,000 rent to have that venue, and then all the crew guys were there for free. All the sound, lights, and everything, I think, got donated. Mates, the cartage company, they donated all the carding, and so I'm sure certainly the lion's share of the money is going to go right into Tony's account, pay for his treatment, and so that's a real key element. A lot of times you do charity things, and you really don't end up with anything at all, But in this case, I think we did really good.
And the instrument auction thing was a great idea as well, because that's going to pull in probably just as much as the show.
Oh, yeah, it's so great. And so many people contributed. Neil Peart, the guys from KISS, everybody. So many people contributed to it. It was so wonderful. It's really, really great. It's just, he's got a great reputation as just a pure genius musical guy. But he's also a hilarious guy, amazing comedian, and just a blast to be around. He's just a great guy. I hate to see things like this happen to people that really I want to have around for a long time,
Well, as we wrap it up, let's finish on a happier note in terms of the year ahead. big touring plans? What's the next year look like for Billy Sheehan?
Lots of Winery Dogs. We're already filling in the calendar. We got a lot of it filled up, a couple of openings, which I'm glad we can fill in with other things. But we've got Europe and the UK. We've got South America and Mexico. We've got Japan and Southeast Asia. We got more America. We'll probably do more back in Europe, festival time, all the way up to Monsters of Rock cruise in October. I think is the last thing we have booked. So we'll be playing way into next year, which I'm really pleased about, because I got to play live. That's my thing. And Winery Dogs is a great, a lot of fun to play live with this band. So I'm really, really pleased that next year is really jammed with gigs.
My final question is the song Shy Boy. I think that's a song you've played in every band you've ever been in. What is the history of that song? Because, everybody loves it and it's a staple with you.
Well, I wrote it back in Talas back in the day, and it's just, there's a couple of versions of it that we had that we recorded before the record was made, where there were some variations on a few little things. Then when I brought it to Dave, we did the key change for the solo, which I thought was a nice move, down to the B minor instead of staying in D. And I think that was Dave's idea too. So we got an arranger's credit, rightfully so. But he let me keep my publishing on the song, which is very, very generous of him. He didn't have to do it, and he did. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it was just kind of when I was a kid, I was really shy with girls, and I don't necessarily write anything that's autobiographical, and it's not completely autobiographical. But the seed of that idea came from the fact that I was really shy, but I wanted to meet the girls, and when I was in the band, there they were. I thought, so hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is my job for the rest of my life. So it worked out eventually here. So, but I'm glad people like the song. I always feel like I'm playing it too much, so I always try to nix it out of it. It's too shy, but I go, nah, let's not. We've done it a lot, but I'm just, if people are happy to hear it, I'm happy to play it for them for sure.
That was Billy Sheehan. Now, it only seems fitting that we end with the song Shy Boy, so this is the version with Tony MacAlpine playing on it, from PSMS, and I highly recommend you pick up their live DVD. If you want to check out the episode with Tony, go to thedoublestop.com. It's episode number 24. That's it for this week. If you like what you heard, please leave the show a 5-star rating on iTunes. Until next week, I'm Brian Sword. Thanks for listening.